I mean, it's so basic, and
Okay.
it's really funny because Sally texted me last night and said, gee, that was kind of a harsh, you're being kind of hard on yourself with that text you sent to Kirsten about the atrocious video
Yeah, it
of
sounds
hand
like, I mean,
walking.
I was going to ask you because it sounds like everything went backwards with Huckleberry, or what happened?
Well, we kind of stepped it back a little. I guess what happened is, and I don't know, we've had this stretch of being gone out of town on Mondays and stuff going on Mondays, so I haven't been able to come. Um, so I don't know if Sally told you, like, what is the last thing you really heard about him? I mean, nothing's big's
I was
going
trying to think back. The last time we checked in with Huckleberry, he was doing really well.
Yeah, and we
And
were
I
doing
think you guys
pony
had
rides.
moved, you had just started riding him. I think the last video I looked at was Ellie was leading him and
Yeah.
Sally was sitting on him.
Yeah. So then we had our lesson with you, and then next time we were out, then Sally led him and I rode him. So we've each had a total of one ride.
Okay.
Because remember, I think what our homework was kind of like, okay, you guys need to do this with a ground person at least 6 to 12 times
Right.
until I can't remember what it was, like finds, can keep himself straight with your help in the saddle or finds enough balance to be able to be ridden without a ground person. But what really happened was, um, Sally told me that she felt like, and I saw a little bit of this too, but she was the first one, I think, to pick up on it and say it out loud. She said, I feel like he's getting anxious, like
I
with
think
this.
that's what I saw in the riding video too, that
Yeah.
it would be easy to push him a little too fast under saddle, that
Yeah. We
he
found
might get
opposite.
anxious, or he was pretty unstable, if my memory serves me well.
Yeah.
He was pretty
Right.
unstable, which will quickly lead to anxiety with a rider.
Yeah.
And
And like
so
a horse
that's
like,
why just carrying a rider and having the rider focus entirely on being vertical and stable, not having
mhm,
to direct him too much,
yeah.
was that would be the safest way to kind of reintroduce him to being ridden.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
it'll
they,
help him stabilize. Like you guys being up on his back, we'll look at the video today because you said there was a bit of a setback. But if it, he definitely was not stable with a rider like he was on the ground.
right. And I guess where we're at is she had noticed this anxiety and said, I feel like we need to just like step back. And so I said, yeah, that makes sense. And then as time went on, so we kind of went back to our regular programming, which is basically like walking him in the corridor, walking him in patterns, both directions. And we were working on to well, that's more detailed. I'll just give you the overview. So we kind of stepped it back, and we haven't been tacking him up. This has probably been like maybe since, I think I've got the date written down of our last lesson, maybe in
Been a
August.
couple of months. I want to say at
Yeah,
least a month, if not more.
yeah. Anyway, so he hasn't been tacked up. But then Ellie was saying, and I started thinking, wait a sec, if he's getting anxiety from, because we had tacked him up a number of times and just kind of dinked around with the mounting block and did, some gentle kind of exercises there before we even started that, pony ride chapter. And so Ellie said this, and I started thinking about it too, that, well, she really felt like instead of taking a step back and not even tacking him up, what if you just keep tacking him up and then, you know, after doing that for a while, then get back on him and just ride him with, like Kirsten's saying, with a ground person, just ride him maybe in a circle or in a straight line and get off. Just like
Yeah,
she's feeling like, what if you just make it so like riding, okay, big deal, you know?
it's a better way of thinking than sort of backing off. So
Yeah.
when you're doing rehab, I used to call it restarting horses because you basically have to go through the same steps you would go through it for a horse that's never been ridden if they've been ridden and had a negative experience. So
Mm-hmm.
now they have, so the way horses' brains work is they have exceptionally good memories. So the last memory he has is as real as if it happened that day or currently or the day before.
Mhm. Mhm.
They live very much in the moment. They have great memories and they live in the moment, but they don't have any capacity for imagination. So they can't imagine, as much as you've built trust with him, that the writing would be any different than his past experience
Mhm.
until he's ridden and starts to realize in the current moment that it is different. So that's
Mhm.
why with horses, we don't push forward, but you don't necessarily retreat too far
Mhm.
from where you were. So that's kind of what Ellie was
Okay.
saying, which I would agree with,
Mhm.
that you got him really confident and calm, number one, with the groundwork, built up his body, made improvements. Then we added tack. Okay, he's
Mhm.
good to be tacked up. He's good to be worked on the ground. So then you
Mhm.
start taking him to the mounting block. Okay,
Mhm.
maybe he gets anxious with you standing on the mounting block. So
Mhm.
again, you stand there until he has a clear experience in the moment of feeling safe and calm and relaxed while you're standing on the mounting block.
Mhm.
Those
Mhm.
that internal experience of feeling safe and calm has to be the new experience
Mhm.
for every step of being ridden.
So to replace the old experiences, it's almost
Yeah.
like you're rebranding it. So I
Yes.
have one tiny question about the mounting block, like exercises of, Sally did that more with him than I did.
Hmm.
Tacked up, she'd walk it, or even untacked, walk him up to the mounting block, stand there, pet him, climb up on the mounting block, pet him, and then I guess one day we got ourselves all confused about, okay, so if he's at the mounting block and his head is up and he appears to be an extension or anxious,
That's when you wait.
do do we wait? Like if say I'm standing on the mountain, wait until he lets his head down, relaxes, releases tension, licks, chews, whatever, gets a softer eye. Then at that point, we walk him away from it. Or what do we do
Well,
as a relief at that point?
so that's sort of along the lines of thinking of pressure and release, positive, negative reinforcement. And I take a slightly different point of view. I go, okay, this horse has some anxiety with the thought of being ridden or being ridden. So it's first, he's going to tell you either on the way to the mounting block, at the mounting block, when you first get on, or maybe the first 5 minutes of the ride. Anywhere within that framework of being ridden again, when he shortens the neck, if he shows, if the energy is escalating, if he's showing body language of tension or anxiety. So he's mad or he looks scared, either one. Anything but calm, soft, and attentive is the beginning of the horse saying, I'm not too sure about this. They're just saying, I'm not sure. It doesn't mean they're acting out
Mm-hmm.
or bad behavior. So, wherever that occurs is where I know I need to pause because the horse is telling me I might need to get defensive about this. And so that's the exact context, the exact moment that I need to think in terms of gaining acceptance.
Okay.
Okay. So, not making him do it and not like approach and relief, like or approach and retreat.
Mm-hmm.
The thought behind that is if you expose them X number of times, they just get over it. And
Mm-hmm.
that can actually lead to eh, really some problematic issues with horse training.
Okay.
So that's more along the lines of like sacking out or flooding, where you approach, you retreat. What I find is as soon as the horse tells me they're feeling unsafe or unsure, that's the place I have to build confidence. That's
Okay.
my real job, is to restore dominance of the parasympathetic nervous system, work with the horse until they feel safe with the very step that they're worried about.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really approach or retreat.
Okay.
I sort of go, okay, as I'm going through the steps of taking him to the mounting block, getting a leg over, sitting on him, somewhere in there, if I start to lose that energy of calm attention, that's me reading him about his emotional state, how he feels about this idea of being ridden.
Mhm.
And so, as soon as he's skeptical, unsure, uncertain, unstable, distracted, whatever the reason, he's going to change posture or
Mhm.
energy level or body language to show you that he's tense or anxious. So, at that moment, I can back off a little, but I don't want to leave the scene because then he
Mhm.
never learns how to accept the very thing that should
Mhm.
be an easy part of our relationship.
Mhm.
Right. So I look at, trailer loading, saddling, getting on, getting off. I'm not going to overwhelm them with it. And so the approach part can be a bit intense. And then the retreat part almost reinforces that they can only relax away from this thing that you're asking
Oh,
them
right.
to
Okay.
accept.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense the way you said that. Yeah.
So my retreat, so to speak, is slowing down, pausing, and not pushing forward. That's what I
Mhm.
call the retreat mode. So
Mhm.
I'm not physically going away, getting away from the
Mhm.
mounting block, stopping what I'm doing, taking the tack
Mhm.
off, that kind of thing. But I'm just
Mhm.
pausing and saying, okay, I hear you. I'm
Mhm.
not going to keep going through my agenda because you're telling me my agenda might be problematic for you.
Mhm.
So let's get through this problem before
Mhm.
we continue down the path of the agenda.
Mhm.
And so wherever that happens, like you you really can't overdo an internal sense of safety. So the fact that you guys backed off and took a break from it certainly doesn't hurt, but it
Mhm.
also doesn't mean he's going to be any better the next time you go to ride him. So it's definitely backing off and making the job easier always builds confidence and builds the relationship, but it doesn't necessarily get you where you want to go. It doesn't help him through the problem that he's having.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. Sorry, I
Okay.
inhaled some water.
Oh, sorry. You want me to
That's
pause a
okay.
second?
Okay.
I
Hopefully
know I
that's
hate
good.
that when I'm
I
choking
hate
on
that.
video.
It's
I
like
can
you,
always pause the video if you
and
need
there's no
to.
way to like shortcut it.
I know. You got to
That
hack it
totally
up.
makes sense to me.
So this is going
And
to
I think
be
that's really helpful to where we are right now because we just kind of like went way back to the beginning. And I think part of it too, the other thing that happened around that time, I don't know, has Sally discussed the goat situation with you?
yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
there was that day. I don't know if she told you about that day in the outdoor. She had Lindsay. We were both on the ground. She had Lindsay and I had Huckleberry. And she had, I think, a few days prior to that, she was out there. I wasn't there. She had Huckleberry, and Huckleberry was basically like, cool goats, and was like
Yeah.
grazing right by them. But then a couple days later, we're both out there. We each have a horse. And Lindsay started to get real reactive because she hadn't seen them yet.
Uh-huh.
And so Huckleberry picked up on her energy and started getting ramped up and wild. And he's a little, it's stressful when he goes in that mode because, it's hard after Rue, who, if he starts to start up and he's on the rope, I know he's not going to come in toward me and he's not going to yank and try to like run away from me either. He's going to go in a circle
Right.
or kind of maybe get frozen.
Right.
But so what happened this day was he he started, he's like 1,000,000 feet tall and I've got the rope and he starts to like back up really fast. So he like tries to pull away and
Uh-huh.
it's like, that's bad enough if there's no one around, but Sally and Lindsay were there. So
Right.
like, okay. So I tried to do the best I could in the moment and move him around and just try to work with it. And then I didn't know that this is a trait of his, but like he started to let down and like Sally's way over there and we're kind of like calling back and forth to each other, like with updates.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it looks like he's gonna roll. So all of a sudden he's sniffing the ground and I turned my head to tell her that. And all of a sudden, like I turn back and my whole field of vision is dark brown. And next thing I know, I'm on the ground.
Did he
So
kick
I've
you
taken
or
a,
did he just kind
no,
of
he
shove
just like
you?
swooped toward me and just sort
Ah,
of shoulder checked me, I think. And thank God, like I jumped right back up and I wasn't hurt. Thank
mm-hmm.
God. But you can see where I'm at. um,
Yes. So,
because it's like, I guess that's on my list. My agenda is confidence, trust, starting over, and then
okay.
tacking up with anxiety, which we kind of went over, hand walking, how to get his shoulder over without nagging him. So really
Don't,
now I'm at a
okay.
point where I'm
So let
like,
me start with the
trust but
last one.
verify.
The
I don't
last
like,
one quickly is
mhm.
as many times as you have to push the shoulder over to stay on track, you do it. And
Okay.
because that's a whole development of hindquarter stability and back stability.
Yeah.
As long as you're not the one holding it there 100% of the time,
Mhm.
it does not matter if you give the aid every other stride, as long as there's
Okay.
a little release. If he
Okay.
can't hold it, he can't hold it. So you give the aid as
Okay.
much as necessary.
Okay.
And
And
as long
then like,
as you're not the one constantly doing it, so he falls a little, you put him back. He
right.
falls a little, you put him back.
Right.
That's you can do that every 2 seconds for the entire hour, and you're still not doing it for him. You're teaching him how to hold
So
it.
yeah, so kind of where I'm right now, I'm for sure always leading him. I'm on his left side. So I've got my rope, and Sally was telling me, like, instead of underhand with the rope, you need to have it overhand just for a little more safety and control. Like on the rope, that's like if his head's here, this hand, like this instead of like this.
It whatever you're
Anyway,
comfortable with, whatever you're comfortable with
yeah.
is how you hold the rope. The important principle is that when a horse starts to show a loss of calmness or a loss of attention, my cat's trying to join us. Um, as soon as that energy shifts away from calmness, you have a horse that's heading towards dominance of the fight flight nervous system. The only thing you can
Mhm.
do in that moment, your number one tool for safety, is distance between you and the horse. So most
Mhm.
people go
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
and try to stop the horse, back the horse up, make the horse move the hindquarters and do something. The first thing I
Mhm.
do, even if I'm the one moving,
Mhm.
I'm at the end of that lead rope when that
Yeah.
energy starts to escalate
That's
because
where I like to be.
yeah. And
I greatly prefer that.
if you can't get the horse to the end of the lead rope, you go to the end of the lead rope
Yeah.
because at that moment
Right.
there's no training going on. It's just
Right.
a safety
Right.
issue.
And there's no higher priority than just staying away.
Stay away, stay out of distance of being
Yeah.
like you can for sure stay out of distance of kicking and striking and biting and headbutting and all of that. And then what you want to watch for is when he spooked, he had no problem to come towards your space,
Hmm.
right?
That's what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to grapple with that. And
Okay.
I didn't realize that I actually did have some PTSD about that issue
Okay.
because maybe a week later or something, I was hand walking him and I was like actually getting nauseous. I'm like hand walking a horse, Kirsten.
Yeah.
But you know how
So,
it is. I mean,
no,
it's just,
the
it's,
most injuries I've had with horses have all been on the ground.
yeah.
My worst injuries have all been when I'm on the ground with a horse. And so, what you can do to rebuild, because it's a great example of being realistic about our own learning frame of mind and being realistic about the horse's learning frame of mind. So we put aside the fact that you're a good rider and a confident rider. We put aside the fact that he's a horse that's been ridden 1,000 times. He also came into a pain issue under saddle. So it's like he wasn't ridden perfectly. And you've had issues where you've been hurt, so you have residual triggers around horses. And that's the horse human relationship in a nutshell, right?
Mm.
So it doesn't matter if we feel 100% calm, but our horse is going into anxiety or tension because they're being triggered to feel afraid for whatever reason. We don't need to know. As soon as we read the body language and the energy that goes with fear, just because we can ride it doesn't mean we're helping the horse in the least or
Mhm.
building a relationship. So sometimes we adjust the training program for the sake of the horse, which is what we were just talking about at the mounting block.
Mhm.
And other times, what we're going to do is adjust the ground rules for ground work. We're going to adjust those rules to help you.
Mhm.
And it's nothing against him, it's for
Mhm.
you, right?
Yeah.
Just like
Mhm.
him telling you, I'm not sure I want you up on my back, isn't personal. It's
Mhm.
just
Right.
where he's at right now. So we
Yeah.
have to respect that in the
Mhm.
context of a relationship. So we'll come back to the physical thing with like groundwork as an exercise, the hand walking. We'll do that last because out of your list, you've mentioned anxiety, confidence, personal space,
Mhm.
feeling safe and secure. That's really what's on your mind, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been kind of the mode lately. I feel a little better. I've gotten him on the grass, and I mean, he's so dang cute. It's like, sometimes it's just like, oh God, like why am I doing this? And then
Ye-
other times like, oh, he's so cute, and he's helped. It's been so helpful to be around him since Rue. And it's like, Ellie reminds me too, Rue was a huge handful in the early days, and he could be very scary.
So
But
exactly.
yeah,
And so when we look at foals or we look at horses, they are beautiful and they are also 1,000 pounds with 4 feet on
right.
the ground, right? So when I look at the ocean is beautiful, but I also
Mhm.
have been in it enough. I have a healthy respect for the power of the
Yeah,
ocean.
yeah. I
And
go boating
that's,
too, so I get that.
yeah. And you
Mhm.
see all the time people drowning at the beach or on boats because they don't understand the power of it.
Right.
And the ocean doesn't care, just like your horse doesn't care
Hmm.
if you get hurt because of the innate force that is
Hmm.
just, it is the innate force. We either learn
Hmm.
to work with that force and we can learn to channel it, we can harness it, we can surf
Hmm.
it, we can play with it. But if we lose our respect for the power, that's when we get hurt. We
Hmm.
start to think of them, even a 90-pound dog will take you out. That is a
Right.
force to be
Yeah.
reckoned with.
Yeah.
And even a little mini is still 300 pounds. I
Yeah.
go, that's a
My
lot of
standard
force.
my standard poodle pulled me over backwards, like when her leash was wrapped around a chair leg. So it's like, and
Yes,
she was 60 pounds. So
exactly.
yeah.
It's still a lot of force. So the one thing when you lose a little confidence or when things feel a little shaky, the way you empower yourself to restore confidence is twofold. Number one, if well, you're going to not put yourself in a situation where you start to question your safety. And if you suddenly get put in a situation, circumstances out of your control, where you're questioning your safety, then you need to change whatever you have to change to restore your sense of safety as a priority.
Hmm.
And there's
Okay.
no way we can authentically train horses if we don't feel 100% safe.
Right.
So that's why it's a huge priority for you to either limit, sort of take the steps you need to take
Hmm.
to say, I feel 100% safe hand walking, or maybe you
Hmm.
don't. So if you
Hmm.
don't, you could go back to the very first exercise we did with him. You walk backwards and you let him just kind of move around near you at the end of a long lead rope.
Hmm.
And if he looks left, you sort of go right. And if he looks right, you kind of go left, but you keep
Hmm.
him at the end of the lead rope.
Hmm.
Where hand walking, that shoulder to shoulder relationship, you're closing down the personal space to a couple of
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
And so if I don't feel 100% safe doing that with that particular horse in that particular moment,
Mhm.
Like, even if I did and the goat walked in the arena and suddenly I don't, the
Mhm.
first thing I'm going to do is increase the distance between me and the
Yeah.
horse.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to abandon ship on the hand walking rules
Yeah.
immediately
Right.
because either I lost a sense of safety or my horse did.
Yeah.
Doesn't
And
matter who
yeah,
started it.
it's just better to be farther apart.
Yes.
Mhm.
And
So you're,
especially if the horse has a history or a tendency, because some horses, when they feel insecure or scared, they view you like another herd member. And so
right.
they come in to sort of crash into the other
Seek
herd
that.
members.
Yeah. Mhm.
And if we don't set the boundary for that, they do that instinctively, not realizing how fragile we are.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
just don't know.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would say for the next couple of months, your minimum personal space is an arm's length.
Mhm.
And if you,
Okay,
and
that's
if,
the other thing. I've
yeah,
been
if
watching
you don't
people.
feel safe at a full arm's length, then increase the distance until you feel safe.
Okay.
The other thing is, just like horses, sometimes not moving makes us feel more fearful, and
Yeah.
moving starts to help us feel less fearful.
Right.
Other times, it's the opposite. So you only know in the moment. Like, if I'm trying to help a fearful horse, then I play a little bit with letting the horse move and see, does the energy start to go the right direction? Does it start to go to
Mhm.
calmness? Or if I stand still, does the energy start to calm down? One of those two strategies
Mhm.
is going to work a little better in the moment. It might jump back and forth,
Mhm.
but like for your safety, if you feel safer not moving, then you kind of stand your ground and keep the horse away from you. If
Mhm.
you feel more relaxed by moving, you can move and either kind of drag the horse with you or keep that full uh,
Mhm.
lead line of distance, but let yourself walk around. And if you don't
Mhm.
trust the horse, walk backwards and keep your eyes on him.
Mhm. Yeah, I really don't. I don't trust him, and like when I feel like when we're both in a mode where I feel like, oh, I do feel a little trust. It's definitely in the realm of trust but verify. Remember that
Yes,
one? It's like
yes.
I said to Sally, I'm not comfortable ever taking my eye off of him.
Then don't,
So
because
I just
that will
keep my eye
develop.
on. It's
Yeah.
like,
And it's not a bad habit to have as a rider because a lot of
yeah,
people think, oh, he's old. Oh, he's lame. Oh, he's
right.
been ridden. He's a been there, done that. But
Hmm.
then they tell me all of a sudden the horse
Hmm.
knocked me over,
Did
kicked, bit.
something.
Yeah. And it's like I got kicked last week, not because the horse was after me, but because the horse was so excited. I had to get off because he went into a bucking frenzy. So I got him shut down. I got off because I could feel that bucking frenzy wasn't going to stop.
Hmm.
Even though I had him shut down at halt, you know that energy.
It's still there.
It's
Yeah.
still there. So I go,
Hmm.
this would be a good time for me to get off. And as soon as I got off, he jumped forward, pulled the rein out of my hand, and kicked out as he went. And
Uh,
he nailed me in the arm and knocked me backwards. So I go, that horse, I just am a little more alert
hmm.
to say, don't come in my space.
Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
keeping that distance when I'm with him on the ground
Hmm.
is like, okay, we're going to just reiterate that lesson.
Hmm.
We're going to
Yeah.
reiterate it because even though I thought you were past it, you're still a horse. You still get excited.
Right.
It's possible for all horses. And the
Right.
way I know to start paying attention closer is by sensing the horse's energy level.
Hmm.
So if that horse is dead calm for 5 consecutive minutes, I can start to let my guard down a little bit. I
Hmm.
can start to increase
Right.
the trust and maybe
Right.
close the distance. But
Yeah.
if they're not calm for 1 second, I'm
Yeah.
not going to give them the opportunity
Right.
to accidentally hurt me,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what you're doing. Like even what we started our conversation with, when you go to the mounting block and he's starting to show you that he doesn't feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then we respectfully give him his space. If we just go, if we ignore it and we blow through it, we don't
Mm-hmm.
take the body language and we go, oh, he's been ridden a million times. I'm just going to get on.
Oh,
Right.
right.
But as soon as you go to the mounting block, he's starting to shorten his neck. He's starting to widen his eyes. He's starting to, kind of look anxious. If we just carry on, kick him to go, then what happens after that could be
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Right.
the straw on the camel's
Right.
back,
I think
right?
if anything, we tend to be more like
Too
don't
aware.
get on. I mean, we are always watching his energy. I will say that for us because we're both in this mindset of, we're just really aware of him
Yeah.
that way.
So you need
Um,
to do the same thing for yourself.
mhm.
So the
Okay.
same respect you give the horse when he's uncertain. You
Mhm.
pause, you don't retreat, but you don't keep
Mhm.
pushing forward on your agenda.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
you do that for yourself.
Mhm.
Whenever the butterflies get your attention,
Mhm.
if pausing and focusing on yourself is what helps you sort of regain calmness,
Mhm.
then you give yourself the distance you need, you give yourself the time you need, you give yourself permission to just stand still or to move around, and you
Mhm.
take the same time you would give the horse at the mounting block to arrive at a state of calmness.
Mhm.
You give to yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's basically because as soon as either the horse or the rider is dominant, even by a little bit, in the sympathetic nervous system, being dominant in that nervous system is what makes the instincts get triggered faster and harder,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
So we have horse instincts and human instincts that inherently clash.
Mhm.
So the key to safety is not only does my horse have to stay out of the fight flight nervous system and be as clearly, obviously in the parasympathetic, either by a little or a lot. If I don't trust a horse, I want to see them 100% in that rest and digest nervous system for
Mhm.
consecutive 5 minutes
Mhm.
before I take on the next challenge,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm going to
Mhm.
overdo
Mhm.
that part of it before I add more challenges if I don't trust the horse.
Mhm. Okay.
Does that make
And then
sense?
if, yeah, that does. And then if, like, let's say we're doing the mounting block exercise, we've got it doesn't matter. Say he doesn't have any tack on. We are, I'm up on the mounting block and I see him go into extension or like I see the whites of his eyes. He seems tense. So then during that pause period, instead of being like, oh, forget it, I'm going to get off the mounting block and go do like go graze you or something. um, so the pause is kind of like I would keep standing there. Would I
Yes.
pet him or
Well,
would I
here's the thing as you
like
read,
what are you doing during the pause? Or you just
basically,
pausing nothing?
it's sort of like seeing that black snake on the porch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if I were your guide, if you were the horse afraid of a black snake and I was the rider, I'm the one guiding you. How would
Mm-hmm.
you feel if I didn't notice, like you couldn't talk to me, but you could sort of
Mm-hmm.
show me
Mm-hmm.
maybe you didn't like black snakes? But
Mm-hmm.
let's say neither one of us could actually speak to each other. It was all body
Mm-hmm.
language.
Okay.
Right. So I just like ignore how you feel. I don't see the black snake. It's no big deal to me. So I keep shoving you in that direction where there
Mm-hmm.
happens to be a black snake. How are
Mm-hmm.
you going to react the harder I push and the closer you get to that black snake?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to start
Yeah.
increasing defensiveness,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
How
that's a
would
good
you
metaphor.
feel if I didn't know there was a black snake, but you did, and you're
Mhm.
starting to show anxiety? So I stop and we wait. Maybe the black snake moves away. Maybe it
Mhm.
comes towards us. Maybe it
Yeah.
just sits there. Okay.
Mhm.
But if you say there's a snake 6 feet away, if I push you towards it, I increase fear.
Mhm.
I can take you away from it and we can pretend black snakes don't exist. But the next time you see one, it might be a problem,
It's
right?
gonna start over.
So
Yeah.
if I need you to overcome the fear of the snake, then what I'm going to do is if the snake isn't moving, it's not chasing us, it's just sitting
Mhm.
there, then we could stop at that 6 feet place where you're pretty concerned. It doesn't bother
Mhm.
me. I'm calm, but you're concerned,
Mhm.
right? So the
Yeah.
longer we sit there, if the snake does nothing, if it doesn't come
Mhm.
towards us, if it just sits there or even moves away from us, how
Mhm.
would you start to feel the longer you were there?
Mhm. Mhm.
You would start to realize this is not a danger to me. Little
Well, and
by
I mean,
little, your
yeah,
energy level would come down. Little
drop.
by little, you would
Yeah.
shift out of reactive mode into thinking mode. And you may not want to ever close the distance, that 6 feet to
Mhm.
the snake, but you
Mhm.
would find it less threatening
Threatening. Yeah.
the longer we could stay there safely and nothing
Mhm.
bad happened.
Nothing bad happens.
You
Yeah.
would start to think, oh, okay, I can
Yeah.
trust
Right.
Kirsten. She's not
Yeah.
gonna let the snake hurt
Push
me.
me toward it,
She's
or
not gonna
yeah.
push me towards it.
Well, it's a good metaphor because that's like essentially without the not talking part, it's exactly what did happen. We're
Yes.
coming through. It was that screen porch was off a bedroom or something,
Hmm.
and we're coming out there with our whatever, about to sit down, gung ho, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
and then we, backed up, but then we stood there because like we're trying to process this that this
Right.
giant thing is like right
Right.
there in
Well, and in
practically in
that
the back.
moment, that is the instinct where we pause.
Hmm.
What happens in our nervous system is our instinct immediately says we're unsafe. We
Yeah,
react. When
right.
we pause, we give ourselves a second to see if anything in our conscious awareness knows that actually we are safe.
Yeah.
Does
Well,
that
so
make
and then we
sense?
stood there kind of like we backed up a little bit and then we just stood there for a while, like looking at it, wondering, is it gonna move? What's it gonna do? We're just standing there and then we took a picture.
Right.
And then it never did, of course, did anything. It just sat there. So we eventually just were like got bored with it and like
There you
walked in the
go.
bedroom and closed the door so it wouldn't come in the house.
Yeah,
And then later we went back and it was gone. So it
that's the
kind of was a
perfect
similar,
description because people
yeah.
say, how long do I stay at the mounting block before I start to get on? And I go,
Hmm.
you repeat it until walking to the mounting block and getting on top of it is the most boring thing in the world to you and your horse. That
Yeah, it's
doesn't
happened
even
a
react.
million times. Like we don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
that's the horse showing 100% acceptance of what's coming
Hmm.
next.
Hmm.
Because
Okay.
in his memory, like horses that are hard to catch, part of the reason they remain hard to catch is because once the halter is on, they didn't like what happened the last time they were restricted by
Hmm.
the halter. So they
Yeah.
go, next time I'm going to start being on alert when I see a
Yeah.
halter. And that's what happens at the mounting block. They go, the
Hmm.
last time I was ridden, I felt unstable. I felt afraid. It doesn't
Hmm.
even mean the rider did anything wrong.
Yeah. Just they.
He could have had sore feet. He could have had
Yeah.
sore
Right.
tendons. He could have
It just
just,
was a negative.
right. So then,
Yeah.
as soon as you get to the mounting block, he's sort of thinking, I know what comes next
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
his memory. And from his memory, he didn't like what came after the mounting.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what you're doing to sort of reboot the hard drive
Hmm.
is you're I used to call it going back to the scene of the crime where they show
Hmm.
me anxiety.
Hmm.
I'm going to pause, try a little or back off a little, but I'm going to stay mostly where that reaction began.
Hmm.
And if I stay there, what's going to happen is my nervous system will start to realize I don't need to instinctually react. Little by little, if
Mm-hmm.
nothing bad happens, that's why you take it in small steps, because you want
Mm-hmm.
to increase the odds that nothing bad will happen to
Mm-hmm.
either one of
Right.
you. So you take
Mm-hmm.
small steps. And the longer you spend time with nothing bad happening, what's happening during that pause is the nervous system is adjusting from
Mm-hmm.
am I safe into I am safe,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that is because as soon as we're in instinct or the fight flight nervous system, you have a massive hormone release on top of everything else. So you
Mm-hmm.
get a stress hormone release the second you saw the snake.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you stood there, your body is adapting. So your conscious and your
Mm-hmm.
subconscious mind are sort of going back and forth. Am I safe? Am I not safe? Am I safe? Am I not safe? If
Mm-hmm.
nothing bad happens, eventually your conscious mind grabs onto the more complex situation
Mm-hmm.
and realizes I am safe. And
Mm-hmm.
at that moment, we might, and the horse might realize it mentally, but you still have this chemical cascade of hormones that needs to work its way through the system.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as we're in the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's starting to release pleasure hormones. So that's why it's
Mm-hmm.
associated with calm energy.
Okay.
When we're in fight or flight or questioning safety, we instantly start to release stress hormones. So that's going to manifest as fight or flight, which would mean
Mm-hmm.
fight would be tension, flight would be anxiety. But
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, it's not calm. It's a
Mm-hmm.
stress hormone.
Yeah.
So what we're waiting for is first that nervous system has to like swap a little where the conscious mind goes,
Mm-hmm.
kiss the ground. I am actually safe. Like,
Yeah.
that feeling
Yeah.
of you just lived
Right.
through something and you
Yeah.
go, you're touching yourself to go, I'm okay, I'm safe,
Yeah.
right? That's what the
Yeah.
brain is doing, even if the body's not moving.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the
Oh,
brain is doing. That's what you were doing when you stood there and looked at the snake. You didn't leave,
yeah.
but you didn't
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
And then you hit a place where you got bored. And I go, this is
Mm-hmm.
why boredom is such an important quality because
I
boredom
love boredom.
boredom is the antithesis of feeling unsafe, feeling
Right.
scared,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And excitement has a little bit of fear in it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
100% bored equals 100% safe.
Yeah. 100% safe and comfortable, kind of.
Hmm.
Yeah. I never thought about that before, but that is true.
Yeah. And
So,
so if I have a horse that I'm rehabbing, especially behaviorally, or one that, like he acted out with the goat in a way you didn't
mm-hmm.
expect, you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling a little nervous around him. Basically, you're going to keep him at a distance that makes or allows you to feel safe
Mm-hmm.
until you're so bored that you want to go to him.
Yeah. Okay.
Because what we do
Sure.
as humans to each other is there's a little bit of this belief that if you feel afraid, don't show the horse, don't admit it, push through it.
Right.
The only way
Oh
to,
my gosh. That's all of our years of training in the beginning.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like the only way you're ever going to get over it is if you go do it. Like we have to
Right.
take that
Right.
leap, you know?
Yeah. The desensitization theory.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so I go, it's like the sink or swim method of teaching people to swim. Throw them in the water, see what happens. It may
yeah.
work 50% of the time, but when
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work, it's pretty bad consequence.
Kind of scars people.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If we take it in small doses, and it's what I've talked about, it's actually in the learning frame of mind lesson, the written one in the group.
Okay.
I,
Okay.
I go into the whole model of the comfort zone. That's a
Mm-hmm.
section within the learning frame of mind lesson that is
Oh
the
yeah,
written lesson.
you did that with us, like the comfort, not sure, and then chaos. The
Yes.
circles.
Yes.
That yeah, I remember we talked
So
about that. That is a good
Huck
one.
has Huckleberry has that going on. You can think of it
Mm-hmm.
like a ring of bullseyes, and
Mm-hmm.
you have that going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
The comfort zone is defined as 100% board safe.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
your comfort zone.
Yeah.
The not too sure zone is where you are less bored. So even the beginning of doing something interesting, it doesn't have to be exciting,
Mhm.
but where you feel mentally challenged, maybe not emotionally challenged, right? You're
Mhm.
in the not too sure zone because you're doing something that's not boring.
Mhm. Yeah. Right.
Right? And then that not
Mhm.
too sure zone might start with something like, oh, that's interesting. And could the other side of that border could be, this is really exciting, but I
Mhm.
like it.
Mhm.
Right? As
Yeah.
soon as it's exciting, but you don't like it, you're starting to get into
Yeah.
the fear zone.
The fear zone.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have fear and chaos.
Mhm.
So you have like those are ever expanding and contracting invisible
Mhm.
boundaries. It
Yeah, I think
actually
they're
is,
definitely changeable.
yeah, and it's what happens inside of us.
Mhm.
So, like, if we go right back to what we started with at the mounting block, Huckleberry's comfort zone for being ridden, which used to be quite large, shrunk,
Mhm.
right? Because every time he felt unstable, uncomfortable, unsure, wouldn't communicate well with the rider, maybe got scared under saddle for any given reason. Every time you visit the fear and chaos zone, it has the effect of shrinking the established
Mhm.
comfort zone.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so for Huckleberry, that means he has a very small comfort zone for having a rider on his back.
Mhm.
So that's why I call it a restart. I go, he's like a
Mhm.
green horse. His
Mhm.
comfort
Right.
zone shrank down to green horse level,
Yeah.
unridden horse,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Then for you, your comfort zone has been really expanding with him, bigger, bigger,
Mhm.
bigger to where you wanted to get on. And
Mhm.
then
Right.
after he knocks you off your feet on the ground,
Mhm.
just that
Yeah.
accidentally slipping into the fear and chaos zone
Rinse
shrunk
it
your
down.
comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exactly how it works for all of us. So it's not a judgment, it's
Yeah.
not good or
And I
bad.
mean that, yeah,
It's just how
that
it
makes sense
works.
that it's not a static like scenario. It's dynamic and it's changing all the time based on what's
Yes.
happening. Because like so after I got knocked over that day, and thank God I wasn't hurt and he wasn't hurt, or anyone else. So then did you hear about the accidental stabbing? You heard about that, right? That we
In the
accidentally stabbed his, we, meaning I, was continuing a process of cutting a bandage off his
Oh, I did
foot.
hear about that. Yes.
And
Yes.
then, yeah, so then he reacted because we were using pointy scissors, and I was definitely aiming the point not at his
Right.
skin, but toward like this way. But there must have been a feeling of pressure or something for whatever reason. He yanked his hind leg up and I got knocked over. But he didn't kick me.
Right.
It's just because I was crouched down and he yanked it up and I lost my balance and fell
Right.
over. Again, I jumped up. But it's
Right.
like, so yeah, it's happened 2 times. I'd never gotten knocked over by Rue. So
And
it's
so
like
this
a
is the
whole new thing
thing,
for me.
going from Rue with Rue, I call it the bliss of our ignorance with our best horse. You know, if we've
Yeah.
never had a horse that did anything to us, it's not really in our way of thinking.
Yeah.
We go around with this enormous comfort zone thinking
Right.
we really know what we're doing. And I see
Right.
this
Or we know the horse so well and we've had such a like established time together with things being relatively the same-ish way.
right.
There was never a thing where I thought, gee, Rue could like shoulder check me and knock me over.
But
I
it,
mean, I
it
was
was
walking him out in the
possible.
woods. It
It
was
could
possible. He
happen.
could have done
Mhm.
it.
He could
I mean,
have,
one
but he
time he
never
like
did.
brushed. I remember one time he spooked a little bit. I was walking and I walked him all the time by myself around the property out in the woods and like love that. I miss that. But like one time he did brush me with his shoulder and I thought, huh, You know, it reminds me of how like my friend and I, we got rollerblades when they first came out, when they were first invented, and we skated for years. And I was always going top speed, it's like exhilarating. And then, no pads or anything because we predated that. All of a sudden one day I crashed and it was like, this is ridiculous to even say it. I was like, oh my God, I can crash.
Yeah.
Like I'd never even considered that. And then that's around the time that everybody was starting to wear like knee pads and helmets and everything.
Yeah. And so that's the
And so I was
thing,
like, oh,
is
gee,
that
now I understand why.
sometimes it
So,
takes the accident to even really put it in our awareness.
right.
And we have
That's where,
and it's like, people who have had horses about 5 years, or girls or like people who are really good riders, but they've never been horse trainers. There's this
Mhm.
sort of false sense of how much you know. And it
Right.
gets
Yeah.
you in trouble
Mhm.
because you just don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You don't
Yeah. We
know, right?
say
And it
that
was
all the
like,
time. Don't know
I
what you don't know.
never expected my beautiful little Arab to ever hurt me.
Mhm.
Well, there was a situation where she was in a pasture with new horses who were chasing her around. I didn't know. I opened the gate, I turned my back, and she flattened me, ran right over the
Oh,
top of me.
oh, wow.
Didn't make her a bad horse, didn't mean I couldn't trust her, but I was
Mhm.
not paying attention to
The
her
situation.
energy level in
Yeah.
this situation and got myself
Mhm.
flattened.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, I
And
can
so I
see that.
go, very nice, trustworthy horse, but it can
Yeah.
happen given the right set of
Still a
circumstances.
1,000-pound horse. At
Exactly.
the end of the day, it's like the ocean again.
Yes. And
Mhm.
so that's why those kind of things, that now it's like you don't have to let it disrupt your confidence.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean you don't know what you do know,
Mhm.
because you do
Mhm.
know what you
Right.
do know. But
Right.
it's like an awakening moment where you suddenly go, I didn't realize that
Yeah.
this was
This could
possible.
happen. Yeah.
And now that I know it's possible, I
Mhm.
have a little more respect for the
Mhm.
power, right? The
Mhm.
power or the force of the ocean.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure I check my gear better. I'm going to make sure
Mhm.
I move a little slower. I'm going to make sure I
Mhm.
don't take things for granted. I'm going to pay more
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I was kind of getting lulled into that a little bit. And it's like,
Yes.
this is really, for all intents and purposes, a green horse. I mean, he's like greenish. He's come a long way,
Well,
but
and
it's like his brain was,
not to
it's just,
demoralize people, but I go, every horse from the time they are first born baby foals have the capacity to hurt us, and with
yeah,
never having an intention to do it. They're just huge, powerful animals.
right, right,
And there was
right.
an old guy who used to breed horses who was killed by one of his young foals rearing up, clocking him on the head, and that was
Mhm.
it, right? And it was just that fast.
Yeah.
So, and he was a very experienced horse person. So it's like just being around horses is like being around the ocean.
Hmm.
And in a second, you can kind of take for granted because you've done it 1,000 times.
Yeah, right.
But that next
Hmm.
wave or that next current or that
Yeah.
next situation is a
Hmm.
powerful thing to deal with. So
Hmm.
all the best sailors, surfers, all it's like they have a very healthy respect
Healthy
for the
respect.
power of the
Yeah.
ocean.
I know. I grew up fishing on Lake Erie, and so we were in little boats with little outboard motors, and I mean, we saw a lot of things, and it's like it was definitely instilled in me. Like it's in my DNA, the healthy
Yes,
respect idea. But it's like it's been an interesting time because switching from working with Rue to working with Huckleberry, it's like I kind of landed. I carried forward the knowledge that I gained from Rue, and now I'm applying it to this entirely different, I feel like, situation. I mean,
it
it's a
is.
horse, he never had any foundation,
But
no
it's kind of like
groundwork.
if you get married and you get divorced and you get remarried, you learn
Mhm.
from your first marriage, but your second marriage is not the same guy,
Yeah.
right? It's like
That's like another good metaphor.
this
Yeah,
is a totally different
it's a whole
individual.
different, it's almost like you've traveled to a different country.
Yes.
It's like you're still you, but you're somewhere completely else,
And that's what relationships are. They are that
Mhm.
dynamic. right?
Mhm.
So you are a new person to him, he's a new horse to you.
Mhm.
It doesn't negate the fact that both of you have past experiences, good
Mhm.
and bad.
Right.
And so
Uh-huh.
what you're looking for is the best, healthiest relationship the two of you have to
Mhm.
negotiate,
Mhm.
develop, navigate. And
Mhm.
so there were things, you were sort of thinking it wasn't in your bubble to think he would ever come towards you when he was
Mhm.
scared. So
Yeah.
now it's possible. So you go,
Mhm.
I'm going to make sure I have more distance just
Mhm.
in case
Yeah.
that becomes a factor. And
Yeah.
then that will help you feel safe. So
Yeah.
just like any relationship, things happen. Trust is hard built and easily
Mhm.
lost.
Mhm.
And some of the reasons he doesn't trust you might not have anything to do with you.
Mhm.
It
Right.
comes from his past experience.
Yeah.
So the only way to help him through and to earn trust is to go through those uncertain moments with him.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
you can be the confident guide.
Yeah.
If you're unsure and he's unsure,
It's not a
it's
good.
not a great
Yeah.
combination. So somebody
Mhm.
has to feel safe and secure first, which
Mhm.
is why we have to do the same thing for ourselves in order to help the
Mhm.
horses.
To gain that.
Right. So you
Yeah.
need
Yeah,
to
that makes sense.
just look at if that energy isn't like, if he's not so relaxed that his neck is long and his head is dropped,
Mhm.
then he's telling you he's still questioning things, even if
Mhm.
he's not acting on it or showing an
Mhm.
escalation of energy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So you
Mhm.
can look at the
Mhm.
posture, you can look at the body
Right.
language, you can look at the
Yeah.
energy, and you're constantly listening to him that way.
Mhm.
And then you respond how you respond. If
Mhm.
he's showing you something that makes you worry for your own safety, increase the distance. There's no rules.
Mhm.
Just do what
Mhm.
you need to do to get yourself
Mhm.
safe.
Yeah.
And as you get bored with that, and he gets bored with that, you will
Mhm. Then move on
naturally
from there.
want to move on to the next step or do
Yeah.
something different.
Yeah.
But if you try to go to that next step, like you're forcing yourself to overcome,
Right.
being a wimp or blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
however we
Yeah.
put it, it
Yeah.
doesn't work out all that great.
Yeah, and I'm happy that, I mean, we don't have any sense of that anymore, even though that was in our heads for so long. It's like I don't think Sally or we're not in that camp
Yeah.
anymore. Thank
No, and
God.
people are still surprised when I show them if the horse spooks at something on the trail to go past it and ignore it
Mhm.
rather than take the horse to it. But the
Mhm.
snake analogy is a great one because most
Yeah.
people are afraid of snakes. It's in our
Mhm.
DNA to react to snakes because the poisonous
Right.
snake is deadly to us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people have a fear of snakes, or if not a fear, I jump. I'm not afraid of snakes, but I still jump if I almost step on one or
Right.
one comes
Yeah.
slithering to me. It's like that
Yeah.
instinct is
Mhm.
instinct. Then you have a pause, and I go, nobody would trust me if I pushed them towards the snake that they're afraid of.
Mhm. Mhm.
You would
Yeah.
you would want to get the heck away from me as
Right.
fast as you could.
Like as fast as from the snake.
Right.
I mean,
Now I
so it's
got
like
two
you and the snake would
problems.
almost be like equal problems.
Right,
You know,
because now
that
the horse is
isn't
thinking, I've got this fear issue over here, and I've got this idiot over here trying to
here,
push me to my fear
push us
issue.
together. Yeah. No, that actually is a great metaphor. I think the two metaphors are perfectly apt for what's going on. But I do feel I picked his feet by myself. That's another fear I have. I have this fear of him falling on me when I pick his feet. So that's because, we kind of ran into a situation where we were picking his feet more intermittently, and we
Hmm.
were always doing it together. One person like in charge of holding him and shifting his weight appropriately, the other person picking. But what we were noticing is on his front legs, when we pick him up, what I was picking up on was like I'd pick up his front leg and he'd pick it up but then I could feel his weight, kind of like he's trying to find his
Yeah.
weight, and then he'd slam his foot down, and I'd just
Yeah.
be like, oh my God, like, this isn't great. I don't, so we've worked with that. And like Sally was saying, she likes to have him kind of near a wall, like the non-picking side near a wall. So like that could help him balance if he needed to.
The
But
other thing is, if you're
I'm
worried
still not
about that,
wild about picking his feet by
when
myself.
you pick the feet up, if that foot has any weight to it,
Mm-hmm.
it's making you use your arm and back muscles to keep it
Mm-hmm.
up,
Mm-hmm.
then you have the potential of the horse falling. The
Mm-hmm.
only way to know that horse is not going to fall when you pick up the feet to clean them
Mm-hmm.
is if there's no weight.
Okay.
So when you pick that foot up, it's as light as if it were my hand resting in your hand.
Okay. Yeah.
If they're leaning on you, or if there's weight, or if there's force of them moving, you're going to have to put effort into holding the foot up.
Mm-hmm.
I drop the foot at that second.
Okay.
I never get pulled on because I'm quick to let the foot go. So if I can't hold, like if I'm going to clean a hoof, when I pick up the hoof, if I couldn't just hold that hoof with two fingers, then
Mm.
they're not balanced enough to hold their own foot up. Now, for some
Okay.
horses, I can get away with holding the horse's weight a little bit. It's no big deal. But if you're describing a fear of him falling on you, the only way to be sure the horse isn't going to fall when you pick up a foot to clean it is if foot is so light, it's literally just sort of the weight of the hoof in your hand.
Okay.
Anything heavier than that, or if you're
Okay.
fighting movement, if he's not resting it there like dead weight and you're fighting movement, his whole body could become unstable. And that's why some horses are terrible about picking up their feet, is because you're taking away their flight mechanism,
Yeah.
right? And they have to stabilize their body on three legs. So
Mm-hmm.
if they're
Right.
challenged with that, they get very stressed out about having their feet picked up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the feet, it's like, and again, you can approach that like you do the mounting block.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go to pick up a horse's foot and they try kicking me, it's like, first I'm going to go through the motions of where my hand has to go and see how they
Mm-hmm.
respond. Just like you can
Mm-hmm.
break down every single step of getting on a horse,
Mm-hmm.
you can
You can break
break
it down for
down
that.
every single step of picking up that hoof and cleaning it.
Okay.
So every time he gets tense or unstable, that's where you pause.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you might play by yourself, shifting weight a little bit, but you
Mm-hmm.
slow the process down
Mm-hmm.
to increase the understanding, the teaching, the skill development
Mm-hmm.
for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if that's your fear that he's going to fall, but you have a few indicators that make you think that, then it's a training opportunity for him to
Mm-hmm.
get better at balancing while his foot is up in the air. And it's an opportunity for you to go, okay, let me take this situation and just break it into steps and ingredients. And he's going to show me where he starts to get worried, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to feel very clearly where I start to get worried.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the moments where acceptance or skill development has to occur.
Well, so can I stop you and ask you? So in the moment, I've gotten better at like figuring out how it's easier for him to lift his front feet.
Mm-hmm.
So he will lift it. I mean, I'm not going to say he lifts like Rue, you walk around him and he's already shifting his weight off of
Mm-hmm.
that and lifting it. You know what I mean? I'm very spoiled. So with him, when I lift it, my fear zone is if I feel him swaying
Drop it.
and trying to, and
Drop it.
so yeah.
Drop the
So
foot.
then, so should I
So,
just lift it up, and as soon as he starts to sway, I would just drop it,
yep.
and then back, like step back and just like take a minute,
Repeat.
and then
Repeat.
like
Because if the, like again, if you step in the stirrup and put weight in the saddle, and that's the moment he starts to get unstable and fearful, then that's the very step I have to repeat. So with the foot,
Mm-hmm.
everything's cool, everything's fine until the foot's actually up. The
Mm-hmm.
second the foot is up, he sways and moves.
Well,
So
so not always at first though.
then
So
the
that's what
second
I'm,
he does, as long as he's
yeah,
stable and the foot's light, I can continue down my agenda.
right.
The second he feels unstable is the second my agenda is put on pause
Mm-hmm.
and I drop the foot,
Mm-hmm.
check him out, make sure he feels safe, I feel safe, and redo it.
Mm-hmm.
Redo it 10,000 times because
Mm-hmm.
by number 10,001, you'll both be much better at it.
We'll be bored with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in that process of repeating it, whenever he becomes
Mm-hmm.
unstable, because again, it's this human thing. We think never let them have the foot back or they learn to snatch it. Well, who on God's green earth thinks a 130-pound woman is going to muscle around 1,000-pound horse?
Right. Right.
Like, no, no.
Yeah.
Even my
The
big,
physics aren't in our favor.
even a 6 foot guy, 300 pounds, isn't going to muscle around a horse's leg successfully
Right.
unless that horse chooses to cooperate.
Well, so and for Huckleberry, and I agree with you 100%. So with Huckleberry, and that we're actually getting ready to call to schedule repeat ultrasounds to see where he's at with his hind ligaments.
Hmm.
But in the back of my mind, I think like, are his hind feet. So I always pick his hinds first because I think, well, if there's something in there, obviously it's going to make it harder to pick up front. So I kind of have been wondering in my head, like, is he sore in back? He doesn't appear to be
Yeah.
lame,
Well, and the reason
but
he's
he's
probably bad
weaker
with
in
his
the hind
front
feet.
feet is because his hind legs hurt. So
Right.
if the tendon issue is in the hind legs, picking up the hind legs is no problem.
Right.
Picking up the front legs is the problem because the hind
Mm-hmm.
leg has to
It's
stabilize.
taking the whole weight.
Right.
Yeah. That's why I
So,
prefer to do it with Sally there to get like we get them just right before we try to lift the front. Get
or
it flared up as much.
you do it through repetition. You help him
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to organize his body
Mm-hmm.
because every time you drop the foot when he struggles, he's going to rebalance. He's going to
Rebalance.
put himself in a better position. Once
Okay.
once he does that, you pick the foot up again. If he's not quite right, he's going to
Okay.
shift. You drop the
Okay.
foot. He has another opportunity to put himself where he needs to
Okay.
be. So
Okay.
that's why the repetition works because every time he struggles, he doesn't have it. So you may as well drop the
Mhm.
foot and start over,
Yeah.
right?
That makes
So
sense. Yeah.
you don't have to put him in the right place because we really have no idea where that is,
Right.
but he does.
He does.
Right?
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
we drop the foot and give him a chance to readjust his stance, he's going to keep looking for the most comfortable place to
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He knows
Sure.
you want to pick up the foot. He's cooperating with you lifting the foot. So he's
Mm-hmm.
not defensive, he's just not good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
instead of making him defensive about it, I go, if you're picking up the foot for me, but you can't hold it up or you can't
Mm-hmm.
stay stable with it up, then I'm going to keep repeating the part you're saying yes to
Mm-hmm.
until you get better at the part that you're struggling with.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That does. And I think that, like, I know you have to go, it's long, but I think that carries through for this hand walking question. Like later, if you have a chance to look at the video, like I'm walking him, I'm on his left, he's on the corridor, tracking left, like on a straight line up that mirror wall at Lake Field. And the thing is, like, he'll do fine till we get to the mirrors and then he'll start to drift and he's coming in, falling
So
in
that's a
toward.
physical issue. That's a
Yeah, so
physical
that's what
balance
Sally
issue.
said.
Yes.
So I was going to ask you,
And the
like,
way you know the difference, so
mhm,
even with, we can do a totally separate lesson just on that. That's
yeah,
a totally
yeah,
different
and
conversation.
we're fine with
But
that.
your first question is because what you're doing is you're not separating the behavior from the energy.
Mhm.
So that thing you're describing, where he goes down the line and then he starts pushing in on you, can be the way we know it's a physical issue is if he also is in the learning frame of mind
Mhm. Yeah, he
while
is.
he does it.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
he's shortening his neck, if he's
Mhm.
increasing energy, if he's becoming tense,
Yeah,
then he could be doing the very same behavior for a very different reason.
right. And then I'd want to get him
So
off
the
the ball. And
first thing I think to focus on is like whether it's picking up the foot, whether it's the mounting block, whether it's getting on and riding, whether it's dealing with him and a goat just showed up, or whether it's
Mhm.
hand walking. Look at the thing the horse does
Mhm.
is like ace of two or uh two of spades, two of diamonds, two of hearts, right? They play a card.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
go, okay, I'm going to do this, but they're either going to do it with uncertainty, defensiveness, and fear, or they're going to do that behavior because they can't control what
Mhm.
they're doing. They're not good
Mhm.
at what you want them to do, so they do
Yeah.
something that you don't want them to do,
Mhm.
right? So there's a physical, I'm not good at this, but then there's a defensive, I'm not sure about this. And those
Mhm.
are very different
Different.
energies
Yeah.
within the exact same behavior.
Behavior. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I would spend some time rebuilding your confidence with him
Mhm.
with very simple things.
Mhm.
And you can,
Okay.
I would continue to include like if you have the time, because wherever you need to pause, like you could do
Mhm.
a whole session on just picking up his feet and building confidence on both sides.
Yeah.
You could tack him up. You could make a whole session out of that.
Mhm.
You could walk him around at the end of the lead rope and do that old version of hand walking until
Mhm.
you feel confident with him again,
Mhm.
right? So you can pick any of those and take as long as you want, especially when it's for you.
Mhm.
And if it is for you, it's always good for the horse. You're never going to hurt the horse by taking the time you need.
Okay.
Okay. It's always good for the horse. So it's hard to go too slow with horses. It's easy to go too fast.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I'd agree with that. Okay.
Yeah. So play with that and explore, like go visit the scene of the crime, so to speak. All of these things you described where you're questioning your own confidence or
Mhm.
ability, think in terms of where's the energy first? What do I need to
Mhm.
do for him and I to feel
Mhm.
100% safe and calm? So
Mhm.
that's going to put you back to the starting step, no matter what you're doing,
Yeah.
right? Like some
Yeah.
horses can't even look at a mounting block and they go ballistic. So
Okay.
I go, oh, we start at the arena door
Mhm.
looking at a mounting block.
Yeah,
That's where
start
we
there.
start, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then we're going to, every time I pause and the horse and I cycle into more consistent calmness, has to be
Mhm.
51% calmness compared to anything else. That's it. Once you have
Mhm.
51%, you can try a little challenge, right?
Mhm.
If it
Yeah.
goes below 51%, I wouldn't
No.
try something new. I wouldn't
Yeah.
increase the challenge. And
Mhm.
so play with that threshold in yourself and in him, no matter the task or exercise
Okay.
or interaction that you happen to be
Yeah.
doing.
Okay. Mhm.
Yeah. And if Sally's confident with him and she's confident tacking him up and taking him to the mounting block, but not getting on, you guys
Mhm.
can each choose based on your internal personal
Mhm.
thresholds what part you're going to work on with Huck,
Mhm.
right? And
Okay.
Huck will benefit from anything either one of you choose to
Right.
work on.
That's what we keep telling ourselves. And also, thank God there's two of us and one of him.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for all your extra time, Kirsten.
No
I
problem. I'm glad
really
we got to
appreciate
catch
it.
up. I'm sorry we
It's
didn't
been
look at the
helpful.
video, but we will
That's
go.
okay.
If you want to schedule another one, do another one and we can look at the physical
Yeah,
part of it.
sure.
But I would give yourself at least a week or two of really
Yeah.
making that confidence thing,
Mm-hmm.
feeling safe,
Priority.
a
Mm-hmm.
priority for you and for Huck.
Okay. I
not,
can do that.
and do whatever you can do,
Hmm.
whatever you want to
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
But really play with that understanding because
Hmm.
it's a critical cornerstone of everything else.
Yeah, that's very true.
And
There's
if
nothing.
that cornerstone is a little shaky, it would benefit you both
Yeah.
to shore it up.
Yeah, because nothing else is going to work with a shaky
Yeah.
cornerstone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, sounds good, Kirsten. Thanks so much for your support and what you're
No
doing.
problem. All right,
Very
let me
helpful.
stop the
Okay.
record.